Part 58. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 571. It's a good thing that the ministers are a little afraid, Fukang said. They are afraid of those powerful officials and corrupt officials who have no fear of heaven and earth and do not take the king seriously. If they are brave, the king's hands will be stained with blood. Killing will always be, it's not a happy thing. Chu Qing Huang said nothing and looked out the window. It was another good weather today. But it's cold outside. The sun has been shining brightly for several days in a row, and the snow has almost melted. It is not cold when it snows, but it is cold when it is snowing. I feel warm and cozy when I sit in front of the window, and there is a heater next to me. When I go out, the cold wind is biting, and the biting chill goes straight to my heart. Wen Zhan came here despite this cold wind. His black boots left footprints in the snow, and he stepped a few times in front of the palace. He took the towel from the palace man's floor and wiped his hair and face carefully. Someone came forward and wiped his shoes clean with a cloth. After his whole body felt refreshed, Wen Zhan stepped into the palace door and saluted from a distance, "See Her Majesty the Queen." Chu Qing Huang asked, "Is it cold outside?" Wen Zhan was stunned. He didn't expect Her Majesty the Queen to call him over, and the first thing she said was to ask him if it was cold outside. "It's quite cold," he answered truthfully. "Your Majesty is in a special physical condition now. It's better to stay in the palace for safety. Be careful not to catch the cold." Chu Qing Huang hummed, "There is a stove here, come over and bake it." Wen Zhan was stunned again. He glanced at Chu Qing Huang suspiciously, then turned to look at Fukang, wondering what kind of medicine Her Majesty the Queen was selling in this gourd. "Why are you so gentle to him today?" Although Her Majesty the Queen seemed approachable, Wen Zhan couldn't help but murmur in his heart. Is it possible that His Majesty plans to enrich the harem? If this is really the case, it seems that the imperial husband Fukang was not very successful. "Your Majesty asked you to come over and bake." Fukang frowned when he saw that he was standing still. "Didn't you hear what Your Majesty said?" Wen Zhan sighed and walked over obediently. The palace servant came forward and handed him a small spoon, and Wen Zhan took it. Just as he was thinking that he should stay away from His Majesty, he saw Chu Qing Huang pointing to the stove at his feet. "Just sit here and bake, it will keep warm." Wen Zhan's expression became subtle, and he hesitated again and again. He slowly placed the small dumpling by the stove, glanced at her, sat down slowly, and reached out to grill it on the charcoal fire. "Actually, I'm not too cold either." Wen Zhan cleared his throat. He always felt unsafe being too close, mainly because the eyes of the royal wife seemed to be staring at him all the time, which made him at a loss. "Although I don't have much martial arts skills, I good, but the bones of the body are still strong and can withstand the wind and cold." Chu Qing Huang leaned on the couch. "I won't eat you, why are you nervous?" Wen Zhan sighed, "I am worried that the royal wife will become jealous and give me small shoes." "No," Chu Qing Huang said calmly, "you are not young anymore this year. Has your family started urging you to get married?" Wen Zhan was silent and nodded. "I urged you. Is there a girl you like?" Wen Zhan was silent again. Her Majesty the Queen wouldn't really want to stuff him into the harem again, would she? "Not yet. Prince Rong has just entered the palace." Chu Qing Huang got straight to the point. "He wants you to be his son-in-law." "What?" Wen Zhan stood up in shock. When he looked up at Her Majesty the Queen, he realized that he was too close and took a step back in a hurry. "Prince Rong?" Chu Qing Huang nodded. "The little princess of Prince Rong's mansion." Wen Zhan was silent for a moment and frowned slightly. "Your Majesty should know that I am not worthy of a little princess. How could King Rong suddenly have such an idea? Prince Rong just likes you, and the little princess has no objection." Wen Zhan sighed quietly, "Reporting to Your Majesty, I feel that this incident is too sudden and I am not mentally prepared." It doesn't matter, you can go back and think about it slowly, and then you can reply to Prince Rong after you think about it. Chu Qing Huang said, Prince Rong wants me to grant you a marriage, but I feel that marriage is not something that can be forced, so I will give it to you. Matchmaker, I don't care about the others, I don't care, you make the decision yourself. After all, Wen Zhan can be considered one of his own. Although Chu Qing Huang thinks this marriage is good, she will not force him to do anything he doesn't want to do. Wen Zhan frowned, how come Prince Rong likes me? Chu Qing Huang smiled and briefly explained Prince Rong's considerations. To put it bluntly, he just wants his daughter to marry a relatively simple and reliable husband, without conflicts between wives and concubines, without intrigues, without all kinds of complicated things, conflict of interests. Wen Zhan understood. King Rong is indeed a low-key and thoughtful prince, who even considers the marriage of his children in such a long-term way. Don't seek grandeur, just simplicity and tranquility. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 572. But Wen Zhan also wants a peaceful and stable life. If he really marries the princess of Prince Rong's mansion, he feels that he will never have a peaceful and stable life in this life. Prince Rong's mansion. Prominent and glorious, with overwhelming power. Even if Prince Rong has been low-key enough, it cannot be denied that the current Prince Rong's mansion is in its heyday. The eldest son Chu Xuanyi holds the power of the Imperial Guards, and the second son Chu Suans has entered the Ministry of Personnel. Even the son who used to be the most useless has made a good living. In addition, Her Majesty the Queen trusts her without any grudges. At least in the next 50 years, Her Majesty the Queen is still young and can reign for at least 50 years. In these 50 years, except for the king, the prosperity and wealth of Prince Rong's mansion cannot be compared. Wen Zhan is not worried about the decline of prosperity, nor is he afraid of other things. He just simply does not want to be the son-in-law of the royal family and does not want to have a marriage relationship with such a prominent prince's mansion. He likes a simple life, free from worries, and does not need to be bound by anyone. Of course, being an official in the court and being loyal to the king is another matter. Although he is a bastard of the Wen family, he is now the one with the most say in the Wen family. Even his father has to take into account his weight in the court. Wen Zhan finally got relative freedom, but he doesn't want to have a mountain like the Rongwang on his head. Even if the princess of the Rongwang mansion is a good girl. Wen Zhan left Changming Palace and walked on the way out of the palace, thinking as he walked that people like him are not suitable for starting a family. He likes freedom, unrestrained freedom. There is no one he cares about in the Wen family. When he has the opportunity to accumulate political achievements and official positions in the future, his official position may rise. At that time, he may leave the Wen family and live alone. A person can do whatever he wants. Because there is no worry, there is nothing to fear, and even when to die can be calm and calm. Of course, if he is still alive when he is 40, he should have saved enough money by then, and he can leave the prosperous imperial city, go to some beautiful places, and then choose a remote and quiet place to settle down and retire. Life is so comfortable. When the snow melted, there were palace maids cleaning everywhere in the palace. Wen Zhan's eyes fell on the blue sky, thinking about his life. If he could really live to this state, it would be beyond his original expectations. If he had not met a noble person, he would probably have the same fate as the illegitimate son of an aristocratic family, with his father and stepmother above his head, and he would be controlled by others all his life. Not to mention making a name for himself, he would have to look at other people's faces even to breathe. So, he would be loyal to Her Majesty the Queen for at least 20 years. Lord Wen. As soon as he stepped out of the palace gate, Wen Zhan heard a familiar voice. He looked up and saw that the dignified King Rong was actually sitting in the carriage waiting for him. Wen Zhan suddenly felt a lot of pressure. With an impeccable and calm smile on his lips, When Jean walked over and bowed outside the carriage, "Meet Prince Rong." No need to be polite. Prince Rong's expression was gentle and elegant, as if he had no airs. Her Majesty should have told Lord Wen. When Jean was silent for a moment and said, "To be honest with you, Your Majesty, I actually have no plans to get married." "No plans to get married?" Prince Rong was puzzled. Why? Men should get married when they are old enough and women should get married when they are old enough. Even if you are in a high position, you have to get married. Which man doesn't want to have children and grandchildren? Which man doesn't want to pass on the family line and have successors? When Jean thought about it and considered a more reasonable statement, "I don't have any other ideas at the moment, I just want to be loyal to Her Majesty." "I didn't stop you from being loyal to Her Majesty." Prince Rong smiled lightly. "I'm so old, do you still think I have any ideas?" "That's not what I meant." When Jean sighed, "It's just that I look good-tempered, but I'm actually very stubborn in my bones. I don't like to be bound by others. I want to get more freedom. Once I have a wife and children, I can't help but worry." "I won't restrain you," Prince Rong said. "I won't even interfere with your married life." When Jean shook his head, "Your Highness didn't understand what I meant. I didn't mean that Your Highness would restrict me." "Then what exactly are you?" Prince Rong frowned, and suddenly seemed to understand. "You mean that a person can get the maximum freedom only when he is free of worries?" When Jean nodded, "Yes. In this way, no matter what you do in the future, no matter whether this thing should be done or not, as long as you are not afraid of death, you can do whatever you want without worrying about implicating your family." When Jean was silent for a moment, and nodded slowly, "That's probably what I mean." Prince Rong didn't know what to say for a while. He felt that Wen Zhan was really a strange person. People in the world say that men should make achievements, marry and have children, and bless their descendants. I have never heard of anyone saying that because a wife and children will become a concern, they will not marry or have children. "Thank you, Your Highness, for your kindness." When Zhan bowed again, "I am really not worthy of the princess." Prince Rong came back to his senses and said calmly, "How can a life without worries be considered a complete life? Everyone has weaknesses and soft spots. Birth, aging, illness and death are the norm in life. You can't stop something just because you are afraid of it. If you don't even dare to try, how can you be sure that it is not the life you want?" Wen Zhan was silent. "Since I can choose you as Yun Yao's husband, it is after careful consideration of many factors," Prince Rong said calmly. "Yun Yao has a simple temperament, she doesn't have the willful temper of a daughter of aristocratic family, she won't make trouble unreasonably, and her mother and I will not interfere too much in her married life. If Lord Wen still has concerns, he can let his children not pursue a career in politics in the future, and just be an unrestrained and idle young man." Wen Zhan sighed silently. Why was Prince Rong so persistent? "Think about it yourself," Prince Rong said, lowering the curtain. "Just give me an answer within 3 days." Wen Zhan stepped back a few steps and watched the carriage turn around quietly. More than a dozen guards from Prince Rong's mansion escorted the carriage slowly away. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 573. In Changming Palace, Fukang played with Chu Qinghuang's hair and asked out of nowhere, "What was Wen Zhan thinking about just now?" Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows. "What?" Fukang was silent for a moment. Could it be that he can't let go of his majesty? "What are you thinking about?" Chu Qinghuang glanced sideways at him. "Do you think everyone is like you, letting go of so many charming people, but prefers a strong and domineering woman?" Fukang was silent. Since it wasn't, he was relieved. Nuan is sometimes strong and occasionally domineering. These are the qualities a queen of a country should possess. Fu Kang began to coax people to death again, but most of the time Nuan Nuan is gentle. Yeah. Nuan Nuan, don't always question my words. Fu Kang was dissatisfied. What is I thinking in my heart? Can't Nuan Nuan see through it at a glance? Is this the beginning of settling scores, seizing the opportunity to show off your temper? Chu Qing Huang took a sip of tea and felt more and more clearly that the wolf cub had a tendency to have a bad temper. Nuan Nuan. Fu Kang pursed his lips, with a look of hesitation on his face. Do you also know what the ministers were thinking when they went to court in the morning? Chu Qing Huang hummed. Then. Fu Kang's lips curled up slightly. Wouldn't it be easier for us to deal with government affairs in the future? Find a few loyal and reliable ministers and train them carefully, so that they can work harder, so that Nuan Nuan and I can have more time to talk. Much love. Chu Qing Huang slowly turned her head and looked at him with subtle eyes. Fu Kang. You are so smart. Fu Kang. If this intelligence is used in the right way, I can be like your master in the future. Chu Qing Huang sneered. Unfortunately, if it is used in the crooked way, it will inevitably be cleaned up in the future. Nuan Nuan means that it is a wrong way for us to fall in love. Fu Kang curled his lips. If we don't fall in love, how can we have children? Hey, this eloquence is getting better and better. Chu Qing Huang's tone was leisurely. It's not an evil way to talk about love. Isn't it an evil way for you to persuade me to be a coward? Nuan Nuan has wronged me. Fu Kang picked her up from the couch, got up and walked to the inner room. I want you to know how to make good use of people, slowly delegate power to loyal and capable ministers, and take back those corrupt officials. And the power of mediocre officials, and put them in a position without real power. In this way, your majesty will still be a wise and powerful majesty, and Ziki will only become more prosperous and powerful. When the words fell, Chu Qing Huang had been placed on the bed. She raised her eyelids slightly and said lazily, You have mastered a lot of the art of controlling people. Yes, you have made progress. Fu Kang smiled. Nuan Nuan, do you want to guess what I am thinking? Chu Qing Huang's eyes were calm. You want to eat me? Fu Kang failed to tease Chu Qing Huang, but he was teased instead. He couldn't help but his handsome face lit up. Nuan Nuan can actually be a little more reserved. Oh, Chu Qing Huang said, you want to go to Wushan Yunyu with me? Fu Kang. Chu Qing Huang raised her fingers and said, come. Fu Kang was silent. If he said that he didn't have this idea at first, but now he was completely reminded of it, would Nuan Nuan think he was hypocritical? Yes, Chu Qing Huang said, the beauty is in front of you, but you have no idea. Fu Kang's eyebrows and eyes instantly softened. He lay down beside her, stretched out his long arms, held her whole body in his arms, and began to kiss her eyebrows and hair. Nuan Nuan, I have nothing in this life. I just want to be safe and grow old with you. The years are quiet and the years are white. This wish is beautiful and simple. They are all working hard for world peace. In the peaceful and prosperous times, they were surrounded by mountains and rivers, and none of them were alone. We have each other and we have the whole world. Chu Qing Huang's eyebrows were gentle, and there was a smile at the corner of his mouth. He looked at the young man in front of him who had never changed. Although his temper was a bit older, he was still the wolf cub who regarded her as his god. At this moment, the atmosphere is so quiet and beautiful that people don't want to talk, they just want to quietly feel the fulfillment and satisfaction from the depths of their souls. Time passed quietly, and after a long time, Chu Qing Huang suddenly said, Fu Kang. Fu Kang almost choked on his saliva, and guiltily leaned forward to kiss her lips. It's because the warmth is too tempting, making it irresistible. Chu Qing Huang felt the obvious emotion of someone in silence, said nothing, and concentrated on responding to his request. The sun was shining warmly outside, and the wind was filled with a biting chill. However, the inner hall of Changming Palace is warmly heated, the spring light is bright, and the atmosphere is quiet and harmonious. As the curtains fell, the temperature on the dragon couch gradually increased. The layers of bright yellow curtains that hung lightly on the floor covered all the scenes that were not suitable for children. In a blink of an eye, it's New Year's Eve. Her Majesty the Queen's belly is obviously pregnant. After all, she is more than 6 months old. After the New Year, she will give birth to a baby in the spring season. Therefore, the New Year's Eve banquet is entirely handled by the imperial concubine, and Her Majesty the Queen does not worry about it at all. However, as the imperial concubine follows Her Majesty the Queen closely every day, there is no need to do these things personally. She only needs to pass on the orders and let the officials of the Ministry of Etiquette and the Inner Court take responsibility. They can do whatever they want. It has been 2.5 years since the Queen ascended the throne, and Ziki is getting better and better. In addition to Your Majesty's outstanding achievements in governing the country, the royal families of various countries also sent a large amount of congratulatory gifts at the Queen's coronation and wedding ceremonies. In addition, the economy has been booming in the past 2 years, the treasury revenue has increased, and the people have lived a better life, so the pressure on the ministers has naturally been slightly reduced. Although the Empress ruled the country strictly, the ministers did not dare to embezzle openly, but the treasury was abundant, and they had enough funds to do things on weekdays, so many things were easier to do, and they did not have to worry about money. Therefore, this New Year's festival was obviously more lively and festive. The ministers stood up one by one to toast and sing praises, praising Her Majesty's wisdom and bravery, and her good governance, wishing the prosperity of Ziki and the continuation of the country. Chu Qinghuang was pregnant and could not drink, so the emperor drank for her throughout the whole process. New Year's Eve was lively and festive, but considering that Her Majesty was easily tired, the palace banquet did not last long, and the banquet was announced to be over at midnight. Bang! 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 The night sky was bright with fireworks, and fireworks of various shapes exploded in the sky, igniting the lively atmosphere of New Year's Eve. In the streets and alleys, the sound of firecrackers rang out from every household. Standing on the city wall, you can see the long street with thousands of lights. Another year has passed. Chu Qinghuang looked at the long street with bright lights. Happy days always pass quickly. Fu Kang stretched out his hand to hold his skin tightly, and held her hand. Fortunately, it was not cold. So he held her like this, and looked towards the long street side by side, and said in a low voice, "I really want time to stop at this moment, so that Nuanuan will belong to me forever." Stop at this moment. Chu Qinghuang was silent for a moment, turned to look at him. "Do you want us to become human statues together, guarding this palace year after year?" Fu Kang was stunned, and then his expression collapsed. "Nuanuan, don't pick on me on this beautiful day. Your language expression ability is not good." Chu Qinghuang said, "Recite 6 strategies to me tonight." "Nuanuan bullies me." Fu Kang pursed his lips and held her in his arms domineeringly. "Unless you recite one, you can change your posture." Chu Qinghuang tilted her head and quietly looked at his handsome face under the light. The calm demeanor between his eyebrows was the trace left by the passing of time. The teenager has grown into a calm and unruffled young man. Although this calm young man occasionally deserves a beating, she is the same. The former childishness and impulsiveness, the former domineering and recklessness, have all quietly changed in the silent passage of time. Chu Qinghuang gently stroked her abdomen. "A little life has been nurtured. When he grows up, she and Fu Kang can also be called an old couple." 3 chapters combined into 2 chapters, with a lot of words. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 574. At the end of the year, all ministries are busy with affairs. Wen Zhan, the newly appointed Right Minister of Household Affairs, was even more busy and had little time to think about King Rong's proposal until the new year passed. On the second day of the new year, When he met Chu Xuanyi, who was on duty in the palace, he finally spoke about the matter. I have carefully considered it for a few days, and I still feel that it is not appropriate to get married for the time being. Chu Xuanyi was silent for a moment. Why? Wen Zhan sighed. I may be a selfish person. I don't want to take on more responsibilities. I have no plans to get married and have children. Even if I marry a wife, it may only be a delay. And this world is very unfair to women. Once two people are not in harmony, even if they reconcile, it will have no impact, but it will damage the woman's reputation. Chu Xuanyi thought for a while and did not force him. Since you don't want to, Prince Rong's mansion will not force anyone to do anything, but if possible, I hope you can go see Yunyao and explain the matter clearly in person. After a pause, my daughter's family is prone to random thoughts. If you don't want to get married, it may be just an excuse for her. She can't help but wonder if she is not good enough. Wen Zhan nodded. When the right opportunity comes, I will make it clear to her. Chu Xuanyi nodded and said nothing more. Wen Zhan couldn't help but start thinking, what should he say when he saw the princess in front of her to show that he didn't dislike her? In fact, he did not dislike her. According to the standards of a wife, both the identity of the princess of Prince Rong's mansion and the temperament of the princess are enough to be regarded as the most perfect wife candidate in a man's mind. But Wen Zhan frowned in distress and decided to see the little princess again in a few days. The few days of New Year holidays passed quickly, and all civil and military officials began to go to court on the 6th day of the first lunar month. The morning of the first day after the New Year is destined to be uneventful. Ministers who were still lamenting that the treasury was abundant and life was much better a few years ago heard the bad news announced by Her Majesty the Queen on the first day of court. In the past 2 years or so, I have worked hard to raise troops and horses, promote agriculture and commerce, and develop people's livelihood. Now Ziki's treasury is abundant, its territory is vast, the people's lives are relatively prosperous, and the world is settled. After Chu Qinghuang's opening remarks, he quickly let's get to the point. Is it time to return the 10 million taels of silver we owe Tangling? After the words fell, the ministers' expressions froze, and then they looked at each other and exchanged glances with each other. Pay back the money? Their life is just a little better, why do they have to pay back the money? No, no, absolutely no. Your Majesty the Queen, I believe that the situation in Ziki has just improved, and it is not the best time to repay the money yet. Mr. Yang, the left minister of the Ministry of Revenue, was the first to come out. We can use the abundant treasury to do something we thought before. Once the 10 million taels are allocated, the national treasury will be tight, and many things will not be done. Besides, Dongling is rich and does not care about the 10 million taels. I thought I could pay it back 2 years later. Not too late. I agree with what Mr. Yang said. The minister of the Ministry of Industry came out and bowed to report back. There are several palaces in the palace that need to be repaired, and there are several adults' mansions outside the palace that also need to be renovated. There was a backlog of reports from various places last year. The river embankment is damaged and needs to be repaired. I am planning to take it to the court early in the new year to ask Your Majesty to make a decision. I hope Your Majesty will think twice. Your Majesty, the Minister of War continued, after the fall of northern Xinjiang, the soldiers and horses stationed at the border must be adequately paid. The Secretary of the Ministry of Personnel reported, next autumn the triennial scientific examination will come again. Your Majesty, there are too many places that need to spend money at the moment. I hope Your Majesty will think twice. Other ministers agreed, Your Majesty, please think again. Chu Qinghuang sat on the dragon chair and listened to the words of the ministers below without saying a word, with an unpredictable expression. It wasn't until everyone quieted down that she spoke calmly, this also requires money, and that also requires money. I wonder if you adults need money to raise a concubine. Bang bang bang. The sound of knees hitting the ground rang out. I'll be damned. Master Yang said in a sincere and respectful tone, Your Majesty, in the past 2 years, I have been focusing on court affairs and really have no time to think about the love between my children. I hope Your Majesty will understand. The same goes for me. The Minister of the Ministry of Civil Affairs followed up and expressed his loyalty. I have kept a clean mind. I have not set foot in the brothel for 2 consecutive years, and I have not added any concubines to my house. I will definitely focus all my energy on court affairs in the future. I will never betray His Majesty's trust and trust. The left minister of the Ministry of War was not to be outdone. I have reduced my family expenses, and I only hope to contribute to the Imperial Army. Although it is a drop in the bucket, it is also my heart. I hope Your Majesty will learn from it. Others agreed one after another. Chu Qinghuang looked at the crowd of loyal ministers below quietly and asked calmly, so the money that Ziki owes Dongling does not need to be repaid? I don't mean that, I just hope it can be slowed down. There has been more money in the national treasury in the past 2 years. I hope to repay the money tightly, but you adults obviously have different ideas from me. Chu Qinghuang looked at Wen Zhan and said, Wen Iking, what do you mean? Mr. Yang, the left minister of the household department, frowned slightly when he heard this. Wen Zhan has been promoted too quickly in the past 2 years. Being His Majesty's former servant is indeed beneficial. Thinking back when Master Hong, the minister of the Ministry of Revenue, had his family confiscated and exterminated because of corruption, he thought that he could sit on the position of minister. However, when the eldest princess directly promoted Wen Zhan's father to the position of minister just because she loved Wen Zhan, Lord Yang's hopes were dashed. Last year, Wen Shangshu was demoted and transferred to the Ministry of Industry. He thought that he had hope again and could be promoted to Shangshu, of course. However, there was still no news. On the contrary, Wen Zhan was promoted one after another, until he was promoted to the position of Right Minister of the Ministry of Revenue. He could even guess that, not long after, Her Majesty the Queen would take the opportunity to let Wen Zhan make a contribution, and he would be naturally promoted to the position of minister. No wonder all the major families in the imperial city want to send their sons to the palace. Mr. Yang felt a little unsatisfied. He had worked hard over the years and put most of his energy into the Ministry of Revenue. There was no reason to stay where he was. What I mean is that there is indeed a lot of money needed this year. After the war, in addition to military pay, there will also be pensions for the people in the newly recovered city. Various losses in the war also need money to repair, Wen Zhan said respectfully, but repaying debts is a matter of course. I propose that you can repay half of it this year. Ministers should tighten their expenditures a little and slow down unnecessary expenditures. For example, the repairs of the palaces and pavilions in the palace can be slowed down. The emperor is alone, and many palaces are empty and uninhabited, so it is okay not to repair them for the time being. The Minister of Industry was immediately dissatisfied upon hearing this. Is Wen Zhan directly deducting money from the Ministry of Industry? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 575. Pay back 5 million taels first. Lord Yang frowned, obviously disagreeing with this idea. Dongling is far away from Ziki, and it is not convenient for the envoy to go back and forth. Besides paying back the money, the travel expenses are also not small. If it is to go back and forth twice, it will take more time, energy, and money, which is obviously not cost-effective. Lord Yang is right, Wen Zhan nodded, so what I mean is that you can prepare the 5 million taels of silver at the beginning of the year, and prepare another 5 million taels at this time next year, and then send them to Dongling together. Prince Rong said solemnly, the envoys of Dongling prepare generous gifts when they came to Ziki. When we go to Dongling, in addition to paying back the money, we should also prepare a gift, which is also a considerable amount. After all, courtesy is reciprocity. Now that Ziki is getting stronger, We can't let people talk about etiquette. Huh, a minister in the court suddenly thought of something. The silk and satin sent by Dejo, Shu, and Dongling are just gathering dust in the treasury. There are no concubines in the harem, so it is better to convert them all into silver. In this way, the repayment plan can be faster. Lord Yan's idea is not bad. Lord Yang's face showed a look of realization, and those jewels and jades are rarely used. We can choose some that are not used and convert them into silver. Chu Qing Huang sat silently on the dragon chair, never saying a word, letting them discuss. Prince Rong slowly looked around the hall. Lord Yan's suggestion is good, but silk and satin can only be worn by dignitaries and nobles. Even if some of the jewels and jades in the treasury are removed for royal use, the rest can only be used by dignitaries and nobles and their families. Lord Yan thinks who should be sold to so many things. As soon as these words came out, the hall instantly became quiet. Lord Yan said, if any minister has enough money, he can buy a few pieces of silk and satin and take them home. The women in the family can make clothes to wear. Now that the new year has passed and spring is coming, the ladies and girls in each mansion need new clothes. The ministers looked at each other in bewilderment. Let them spend money to buy the silk and satin piled up in the treasury. This is a lot of money. Who can wear so much? If everyone only buys a few pieces, it won't be a big deal. I think we can send silk and satin as gifts to Dongling. The Minister of Rights suggested. Gifts from all countries, jewelry, jade, and silk and satin are the first choice. It is not impolite. The ministers were silent for a moment. They send it here, and we send it back. The Minister of Rights was speechless for a moment, then pondered. The best silk in the world comes from Shu, and most of the top silk in the treasury is also a gift from Shu. We pick some of the best and send them to Dongling, which is also a sincere gesture. Others heard this and thought that this idea was quite appropriate. So Lord Yang bowed. I wonder what your Majesty thinks. It's useless for Dongling to have so much silk and satin. Chu Qing Huang said lightly. The Emperor of Dongling has only one queen in the harem. How much can she wear? The ministers were surprised. How does your Majesty know that the Emperor of Dongling has only one queen? Chu Qing Huang said calmly. The Emperor and Empress of Dongling have a deep relationship. They have never appointed other concubines, and they will not appoint any in the future. The ministers were silent again, and suddenly they didn't know what to say. The Empress of Ziki had only one husband in her harem, and the Emperor of Dongling had only one empress in her harem. Now they all have the monogamous monarchy system. The emperors used to abdicate early, and now the emperors are infatuated with each other. They are all clean and self-disciplined, not obsessed with beauty, and only devoted to government affairs. In this way, why worry about the world not being strong and the country not being stable? I originally thought that only the empress of their family had a different temperament, but I didn't expect that the king of Dongling was no less than that. The ministers were in a complicated mood. Compared with the self-discipline of the king, the ministers with concubines seemed more romantic and lustful. Today is the first day of court after the new year, so let's discuss this first. If you have anything to say, please send the memorial to the imperial study later. Chu Qing Huang stood up. Regarding the repayment of the money, you can think about it more. It's easier to be debt-free. After a pause, in addition, Yang Iking and Wen Iking are responsible for selecting some suitable silks, satins, and jewelry and jades to sell. If you have many female relatives at home and are willing to contribute, please select some suitable ones and buy them back. It can not only decorate the temperament of your wives and concubines at home, but also relieve me of my worries and work, killing two birds with one stone. The left and right assistant ministers of the Ministry of Revenue bowed and accepted the order. Let's adjourn the court. The whole court of civil and military officials sent her off respectfully. We respectfully send off Her Majesty. Long live Her Majesty. Chu Qing Huang turned around and left with Fu Kang. When they got outside the palace, Fu Kang quickly put a mink cape on her. It was not until they reached Changming Palace that Chu Qinghuang took off her cape and court dress and sat down by the stove. Minjiao served her hot tea to warm her body. Chu Lingchuan, who was already waiting in Changming Palace, stepped forward to take her pulse. Your Majesty will give birth in 2 or 3 months. Although the mother and child are healthy and the fetus is safe, the weather is cold. Your Majesty should pay attention to keeping warm during this period and don't catch a cold. Chu Qinghuang hummed, picked up the teacup and drank a sip of hot tea. Today's morning court is very lively. Chu Lingchuan smiled warmly. What are the ministers arguing about again? Pay back the money. Chu Lingchuan was silent for a moment, thinking of the debt of 10 million taels, and smiled slowly. The emperor should not ask your Majesty to pay back the money. Brother Huang, it's Brother Wang's business. The ministers of Ziki should raise some points. Chu Qinghuang said. They have lived a comfortable life in the past 2 years, but soon they will lose their sense of crisis. Chu Lingchuan nodded slowly. Your Majesty is wise. Although the money still has to be paid back, Chu Qinghuang said, but I don't mind asking my father to give me more money. Chu Lingchuan said, the 3 million taels of silver that your Majesty kept in Nanji's bank account are still there. If your Majesty needs it, I will have someone count the silver and send it over another day. No need for the time being, Chu Qinghuang said, the money from the treasury is enough. The 3 million taels are my and Fukang's private money. Chu Lingchuan smiled slightly. Your Majesty has as much private money as you want. Master, you are the only daughter. How can I still make you short of money? Lingchuan. Chu Qinghuang held her chin and looked at him. My previous servants have begun to prepare for their weddings. What about you? You don't have any plans yet. Chu Lingchuan thought for a while. I traveled all over the world in the past 2 years and was busy with business matters. I had no time to take care of my children's personal relationships. Although I had some leisure years ago, I haven't met the girl I want to spend the rest of my life with. Chu Qinghuang nodded and said in a leisurely and calm tone, if you like men, I can accept it. Chu Lingchuan was stunned. Man. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 576. Fukang couldn't help but glance at Chu Qinghuang, and couldn't help wondering if Nuanuan had heard Chu Lingchuan's thoughts. Could it be that he really liked men? Dongling advocated the style of homosexuality? Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Fukang quickly sat up straight, maintaining the dignity of the emperor's husband. He almost forgot that Nuanuan could hear his thoughts. Well, it was quite strange to have someone hear your thoughts at any time. I don't like men. Chu Lingchuan laughed. Your Majesty is too suspicious. Chu Qinghuang hummed, I just want to say that our fathers are all relatively open-minded. No matter what kind of person you like, as long as he is not a treacherous person, I believe Uncle Chu should bless his son's choice. It is not easy to meet a group of elders with open-minded temperaments. When the previous generation is old, after they pass it down from generation to generation, the family style will still slowly become strict. There is no order without rules. It was like every time a dynasty changed, the words of the founding emperor were the truth, and if others had the intention of rebellion, it would be a great crime that would punish the entire clan. Let alone taking action, even the slightest idea was not allowed. The imperial city was mobilized before the new year, and the matchmakers and bridesmaids were particularly busy. I didn't expect that your Majesty also caught up with the trend of urging marriage. Chu Qinghuang sneered lightly, I just care about the few people around me. What does it have to do with me whether other people get married or not? Your Majesty, this is wrong. Chu Lingchuan boldly corrected the Queen's remarks, all people in Ziki are your Majesty's people. Men should get married when they are old enough and women should get married when they are old enough. Only by getting married normally can you reproduce offspring. If men don't get married and women don't get married, the people of Ziki will become fewer and fewer in the future. How can it have nothing to do with your majesty? Chu Qinghuang was silent, and was speechless for a while. It was rare for her to be speechless when she was criticized by someone. Because what Chu Lingchuan said really made sense. The country is based on the people. If the people are gone, what country and the country can we talk about? Okay, you make sense. Chu Qinghuang nodded and thought for a while. If you are interested, you can become a censor in the court. I think that all the civil and military officials in the court should not be your opponents. Chu Lingchuan smiled gently. This is my eloquence from the experience of walking in the business world. When dealing with people in the business world, everyone is an old fox. The most basic skill is to be able to speak well. If you are speechless in the business world, how can you do business? How can you make money? Chu Qinghuang raised his hand. Retreat. Yes, Chu Lingchuan stood up and saluted. I will leave. Fu Kang remained silent until he left, then he turned his head silently and looked at Chu Qinghuang, wanting to say something but stopping. What? Chu Lingchuan likes men. Chu Qinghuang was silent, then said in a subtle tone, even if he likes men, he won't like you, you don't have to worry about this. Fu Kang. Besides, he didn't say he likes men. Chu Qinghuang said indifferently, I just said it casually. Fu Kang stood up and walked to her side and sat down, stretching his arms around her fat waist. How did the ministers perform today? Does anyone have any special ideas in their hearts? You seem to be very interested in my listening skills. Fu Kang pursed his lips and smiled softly. Well, very interesting. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, I once heard you secretly calculating in your heart that my brother's head is worth 10 million taels. Fu Kang froze, then quietly let go of his hand, looking at Chu Qinghuang innocently. Nuan remembers wrong, right? How could I? A real man dares to think and take responsibility. Fu Kang was depressed, hanging his head pitifully. I just thought about it in my heart and knew the market, but I would never have such a rebellious idea. Yet, I would rather carry my own head to exchange for money than dare to have any idea of master and senior brother. Fu Kang raised his eyes, his weak and innocent eyes were like a big white rabbit. Will Nuan chop me alive? How do you carry your head? Chu Qinghuang raised an eyebrow. Cut it off by yourself and carry it yourself. Fu Kang was stunned, imagining the scene. She said, if I can really do it, I'm afraid it will scare a group of people to death. Imagine a headless shadow guard who is not dead yet, holding his own head that he cut off by himself. That scene can only be terrifying. Fu Kang. Chu Qinghuang got back to the point. What do you think of Lord Yang, the left vice minister of the Ministry of Revenue? Fu Kang said, not bad. He is diligent in government affairs and has good ability. He doesn't do tricks, doesn't play tricks, and doesn't do crooked things. In general, there is no big problem. So he can be promoted to the minister of the Ministry of Revenue. Fu Kang was stunned, then pondered for a moment, and nodded. He has been in the position of vice minister for several years, so he can be promoted. This Lord Yang is also a good official, but he has a lot of ideas in his mind. Ideas? Fu Kang's eyes lit up. What did Nuan hear? Chu Qinghuang. Fu Kang adjusted his expression and tried to maintain his calm and majestic. I just want to know what he is thinking, to see if he has any bad intentions. He feels that he has been diligent for so many years, but he has not been able to sit in the position of Shangzhu. He feels a little unfair, and he came to a conclusion that the reason why he can't compare with Wen Zhan is because Wen Zhan used to be my servant. Fu Kang frowned. It's nonsense. He didn't say it, but he was thinking about it in his heart. It's not okay to think about it. Fu Kang's expression was not very good. Nonsense. Don't make up words. Chu Ching Huang knocked on his forehead. No one is saintly, who can be without a little bit of thoughts. Fu Kang fell silent. This is true. He had once been jealous of the 4 servants in the backyard. From his point of view, Wen Zhan's father is indeed not as good as him, but when I was the eldest princess, I recommended his father because I wanted Wen Zhan to enter the government. Chu Ching Huang smiled. Now Lord Wen has been transferred to the Ministry of Works, and the position of Shangshu has been vacant, but Lord Yang has not been promoted. It is normal for him to feel unfair. Wen Zhan was promoted too quickly. At a young age, he was ranked as the left and right assistant ministers of the Ministry of Revenue. He naturally thought that the position of the Minister of Revenue was reserved for Wen Zhan. So Nuan is planning to promote him. Chu Ching Huang nodded slowly, but he can't be promoted directly. Let Wen Zhan write a memorial to praise Lord Yang. In this way, the relationship between the Minister of Revenue and the Vice Minister will be harmonious, and they can work together better in the future and have fewer disagreements. Your Majesty is wise. Fu Kang admired him very much. He looked at Chu Ching Huang with admiration in his eyes. I admire you so much. Chu Ching Huang smiled. Do you really admire me so much? Really? Then write an article praising his merits and present it to me. Let me see your literary talent. Chu Ching Huang said. It can't be less than 3,000 words. Fu Kang. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 577. After the beginning of the new year, the weather was good throughout the first month of the lunar calendar, and the sun was warm. Such weather makes people feel good. For pregnant women, it is naturally better to get more sun exposure. My belly is getting bigger day by day. The emperor's husband is responsible for all the important affairs of the court. Her Majesty will occasionally summon a few young ministers to chat when she is free. On the 20th day of the first lunar month, Her Majesty received a memorial, which described the achievements of Lord Yang over the years. The words were pertinent and the writing was fluent. She sincerely proposed that Lord Yang be appointed as the Minister of the Ministry of Revenue. The next morning, Her Majesty read the memorial in public at the morning court and asked other ministers for their opinions. Lord Yang was stunned for a while after hearing it, and turned to look at Wen Zhan. Facing the man's gentle and elegant face with a kind smile, his face couldn't help but get hot. I have been thinking about who should take the post of Minister of Revenue recently. I didn't expect that Lord Wen would solve my worries. Chu Ching Huang said calmly. Lord Yang has been an official in the court for many years. He is responsible and upright. I have always seen it, but what I see is just the surface. Some officials in the Ministry of Revenue work with Lord Yang every day and know much more. Lord Yang knelt down. I am ashamed to accept it. Starting today, Lord Yang will be promoted to Minister of Revenue. I hope that in the days to come, Lord Yang can still get along well with the officials in the Ministry of Revenue. After all, only by winning the hearts of the people can you go far. Chu Ching Huang said calmly. Lord Yang has been promoted to Minister of Revenue. I hope that Lord Yang can still get along well with the officials in the Ministry of Revenue. After all, only by winning the hearts of the people can you go far. Chu Ching Huang said calmly. Lord Yang has been promoted to Minister of Revenue. I hope that Lord Yang can still get along well with the officials in the Ministry of Revenue in the future. Ching Huang said calmly. Of course, winning people's hearts by getting along with each other sincerely and doing things seriously is not the same as forming cliques for personal gain. I believe that you all understand what I mean. We understand. The ministers knelt down. Our emperor is wise. Chu Ching Huang stroked her abdomen gently. I am a little tired. After the court is adjourned today, if you have other matters, you can discuss them with the emperor. After the court was dismissed, colleagues congratulated Lord Yang on his promotion. Whether it was sincere or false, Lord Yang returned the greetings one by one, with a smile on his face, but his eyes were always on Wen Zhan. Seeing him turn and leave, Lord Yang hurriedly chased after him. Lord Wen. Wen Zhan stopped, turned his head to look at Lord Yang, and bowed slightly. Congratulations on your promotion. I will bow to you when I see you in the future. What are you talking about, Lord Wen? Lord Yang was a little apologetic, but more grateful. This time, thanks to Lord Wen's recommendation in front of His Majesty, I don't know how to thank you. Lord Yang, you are too polite. Wen Zhan interrupted him slowly, his voice gentle and humble. Lord Yang is serious about his work and responsible for the people. Her Majesty has seen it. The official just wrote an appropriate memorial at the appropriate time, which is what a minister should do. After a pause, such an important position as the Minister of the Ministry of Revenue should be left to an upright official like Lord Yang, otherwise it would be unfair. Lord Yang said, My contribution is really not great. Wen Zhan smiled and lowered his voice a little. Lord Yang should know the temperament of Her Majesty. If an official is not upright, even the closest person will not be reused. Isn't my father a ready-made example? Lord Yang was stunned, and then nodded slowly. Yes, if the Majesty really favored Wen Zhan and appointed people based on personal connections, how could he directly transfer his father to the Ministry of Works and demote him? Lord Yang felt a little complicated, both moved and ashamed, but more grateful. Your Majesty is wise and powerful, and we should be loyal to you. Lord Yang bowed respectfully in the direction of Changming Palace, then turned to look at Wen Zhan. However, Lord Wen's recommendation of me is enough to show that Lord Wen is an upright and courageous official. We all serve Her Majesty, and I hope to work well with Lord Wen in the future. Wen Zhan smiled calmly. Of course, it is my honor. By the way, Lord Yang bowed his head mysteriously. Does Prince Rong have something to ask you recently? Wen Zhan was silent, then smiled. Lord Yang is too suspicious. Lord Yang understood that this meant that he didn't want to say more, so he nodded. I will go to the Ministry of Revenue. Lord Wen will come with me. Of course. So the two people who were originally equal and now became superiors and subordinates came together in an extremely friendly manner. But when someone is happy, someone else is sad. Wen Xingyun, who was demoted to the Ministry of Works as a minister, was in a bad mood. His son was the left minister of the Ministry of Revenue, and he was demoted from the position of minister. He thought that it would only take a while, and when the matter of Wen Li was over, Her Majesty would transfer him back for Wen Zhan's sake after her anger subsided. However, that rebellious son. He actually recommended someone else to be the minister of the Ministry of Revenue and left his father aside. He was simply a traitor. Especially when Xingyun was not familiar with the affairs of the Ministry of Works. He had been thinking about returning to the Ministry of Revenue during this period, and he did not work hard in the Ministry of Works. I don't know if other adults turned a blind eye to him for Wen Zhan's sake. But after the matter of the Minister of Revenue was settled today, he felt that his colleagues in the Ministry of Works looked at him differently, as if they were ridiculing, mocking, and pitying, which made Wen Xingyun angry. And all this was because of Wen Zhan. When he got home in the evening, he angrily ordered someone to find Wen Zhan. As soon as he saw Wen Zhan, he threw the teacup in his hand. What's wrong with you? Did you get kicked in the head by a donkey? The position of Minister of Revenue was handed over to someone else for nothing? Are you an idiot? Wen Zhan tilted his head, and the teacup flew out from his ear and fell on the doorstep. The servants retreated tremblingly, consciously staying far away, not wanting to be affected by the anger of the adults. Why is father so angry? Wen Zhan's expression was calm. Lord Yang has enough qualifications, he has the ability, and he works hard and is loyal to His Majesty. Isn't it normal for His Majesty to want to promote him? Your Majesty wants to promote him. Wen Xingyun was furious. If you hadn't written that memorial, would His Majesty have promoted him? Kneel down. Wen Zhan certainly wouldn't kneel down. He looked at the man who was about to lose his grace in front of him and smiled faintly. The Emperor's heart is unpredictable. Father always thought that His Majesty favored me. Didn't he think that this was just an illusion? Wen Xingyun looked at him gloomily. Father, calm down. Wen Zhan didn't intend to continue standing here and listening to him vent his anger. The current majesty is more unfathomable than father imagined. What she is thinking in her heart is not something that a mortal like father can easily guess. After saying this, he turned and left. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 578. According to the date calculated by the imperial doctor, Chu Qinghuang's delivery date was around March. In the first month, Mother Wen and the wet nurse were ready, and the imperial doctor was on call at any time. By February, Fuekang began to become nervous. He heard that the delivery was approaching and the attack might occur at any time during the day or night. He was so nervous that he couldn't sleep every night, so he stared at Chu Qinghuang with an unprecedented uneasy expression, as if he was the one who was about to give birth to a child. In addition, Wen Po said that the woman was in danger of dying while giving birth, and he was even more unable to stay calm for fear of an accident. However, Chu Qinghuang acted as if nothing had happened. While reviewing the memorial, he had to appease the emperor's wife. There was no movement in February, and she took it calmly. By March, there was still no sign of the attack. After checking the pulse, Chu Lingchuan's expression was very relaxed. It's nothing. This is your Majesty's first pregnancy. It's normal for it to be a few days late. So Chu Qinghuang continued to be fine, while Fuekang continued to be nervous. A few days later, there was still no movement. The imperial doctors took turns checking his pulse every day. The shadows under Fuekang's eyes could no longer be covered, and the fatigue was visible in his brows. Chu Qinghuang forced him to lie down on the bed and sleep. I'm fine, don't worry. Fuekang couldn't help but worry. It's been a long time, why isn't the child coming out yet? Maybe he can sleep better. Chu Qinghuang guessed, he is not in a hurry to come out. Fuekang didn't understand, but after hearing this he felt even more uneasy and wasn't in a hurry to come out. That can't stay in the stomach forever. Time passed quietly day by day. The spring season is warm and the flowers are blooming. The weather is suitable for outings and flower viewing. The young men and ladies of aristocratic families take off their heavy winter clothes and put on brightly colored spring clothes. They attend tea parties today and spring banquets tomorrow. They live extremely comfortably. However, the people in the palace watched Her Majesty the Queen act like a normal person day by day, but she lived like a year. Chu Lingchuan was also puzzled, and the doctors at the imperial hospital were even more puzzled. This situation is indeed rare, but Your Majesty does not need to worry. Chu Lingchuan has traveled around the world and has seen a lot. I have seen special cases. There is a woman who gave birth to a child only after 12 months of pregnancy. 12 months pregnant? Fuekang's expression suddenly changed. Chu Qinghuang was also confused. If it takes so long, will the child be abnormal after birth? Chu Lingchuan shook his head. No, Your Majesty is the destined daughter, and the child will be blessed by God, and maybe it will be auspicious. Chu Qinghuang thought about it, and that was true. After all, Chu Lingchuan was relatively honest, had a close relationship with her, and would not flatter her all the time, so him saying maybe meant that it was just a possibility, at least not just to comfort her. After other imperial doctors took turns to diagnose the pulse, they all came to the conclusion that the pulse was normal, the child was growing well, and neither mother nor child had any abnormality. Fuekang was worried and asked the experienced Wen Po again. Although a commoner woman has never delivered a child who was pregnant for 12 months, the imperial doctor is right. There has been such a special case before, and the child seems to be quite lucky. Po Wen said, if the child was born in a commoner's home, the child is definitely destined to be the #1 scholar in 1,000. The heir born in the emperor's family is naturally even more expensive. He can't be said to be the crown prince. Fuekang couldn't tell whether what she said was true or false. Firstly, Wenpo is well informed and eloquent, and can tell lies even if they are true. Secondly, his mind is so confused that he cannot tell the difference at all. Fortunately, Chu Qing Huang has always had a strong mind, so he didn't think much about it after hearing this. Anyway, as long as the mother and son were safe. But Fukang didn't know anything about women's pregnancy. He had only heard that a woman would go to hell to have a baby. She had no control over whether she would live or die. Even if the conditions in the palace were good, the imperial doctor and Wenpo were the most experienced. But accidents still cannot be avoided. After all, there is no precedent for empresses or concubines to have accidents when giving birth to children in the past dynasties. So the longer the days dragged on, the more uneasy Fukang felt. Don't worry, Chu Qing Huang rubbed his eyebrows, trying to calm his worries. I am the emperor, and my life is very tough. Nothing unexpected will happen. Fukang pursed her lips and caressed her belly, but there are no buts, Chu Qing Huang said. I like to let nature take its course. Fukang said nothing. Perhaps this child is a true dragon emperor, and his temper is different from ordinary children, Chu Qing Huang guessed, but it may also be that he is too dull and lazy, and he doesn't know that he will come out until the day comes. Fukang no longer cares about whether the child is too smart or stupid. He just hopes that he can come out soon and stop torturing him and Nuan. Time has arrived in April amid the anxiety here. The imperial doctor still checked her pulse every morning and evening. Wenpo and wet nurse lived in the side hall of Changming Palace. Apart from eating and sleeping, they spent most of the time beside Her Majesty the Queen, waiting for Her Majesty's stomach attack at any time, so as to make complete preparations. The morning court meeting was definitely avoided. Not only was Her Majesty the Queen unable to go, but even Fukang was unable to leave Chu Qing Huang's side. So at this time, Prince Rong and some important ministers in the court, as well as the young ministers trained and promoted by Her Majesty the Queen in the past 2 years, played a great role in handling the major affairs of the court in an orderly manner, without Her Majesty the Queen having to worry about it at all. Of course, they dare not do anything to anger His Majesty at this juncture. If they cause His Majesty to become pregnant, they will definitely be seeking death. It was postponed from March to May, and looked forward to from May to June. The emperor's heart was broken by the torture, and he lost a lot of weight. Chu Qing Huang even said, "This child is naughty. I must give him a good beating after he comes out." Fukang pursed his lips. It didn't matter whether he was beaten or not. The main thing was to come out first. The child was originally born in the spring, but it was delayed until the hot summer of June. On the night of the second day of June, with Chu Qing Huang frowning and saying, "My stomach seems to hurt a little," all the palace people in Changming Palace took action instantly. The midwife ordered His Majesty to lie on the bed in an orderly manner, and ordered people to prepare hot water and scissors, and all irrelevant people to go out. When Fukang was pushed out of the door, he vaguely realized that the child was about to be born. His palms were full of sweat and cold sweat. The weather in June was very hot, and the evening breeze carried a hot breath. Fukang felt that even breathing was a little difficult. It is said that women have a hard time giving birth. The child hasn't even been born yet, and he's already tormented his father half his life. Fukang took a deep breath and secretly decided that one child was enough, no matter if it was a boy or a girl, smart or stupid. If it was really uncultivable, he would leave it to the master to cultivate. He would never let Nuan have a second child. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 579. Don't worry, a gentle voice sounded in his ears, with a soothing meaning. Your Majesty is in good health, unlike ordinary weak women, and there is an order from the emperor, so there will be no danger. Fu Kang turned his head to look at Chu-Ling Chuan, who was holding a medicine box in his hand. Everything that should be prepared in the medicine box was ready to rush in to rescue when an unexpected situation occurred. Although the chance of an accident is small, it is necessary to be prepared in case of an accident. They all hope that the Majesty is safe and sound. Fu Kang was silent, pursed his thin lips, nodded slowly, and stared at the direction of the palace door without blinking. His heart seemed to be pressed by a mountain, heavy and anxious. But he had to restrain himself. As Nuan's husband, anyone could mess up at this time, but he couldn't. Time passed little by little. Every second was torture for Fu Kang. The evening breeze blew gently, and the night gradually darkened. There were messy voices coming from the inner hall. Almost. Try harder. Prepare the scissors. Hot water. The door of the hall was opened, and the nanny came out. Fu Kang was refreshed. Just as he was about to step forward, he saw the nanny ordering the oncoming palace maids, "Hurry! Move quickly!" The room was filled with pots of hot water, and the door of the hall was closed again. No one looked at him from beginning to end. Fu Kang stood alone outside the hall. The man who had always been calm and unperturbed was now helpless. Chu-Ling Chuan didn't know what to say. At this time, words of comfort were actually quite pale, and had no effect on Fu Kang. So he could only wait. After another half an hour, a loud cry suddenly rang out from the inner hall, "Wow!" Fu Kang's heart skipped a beat. Soon the palace door was opened again, and the nanny saluted Fu Kang. "Congratulations, Your Majesty, Your Majesty has given birth to a little princess, and both mother and daughter are safe." Fu Kang was stunned, and then he rushed in without saying anything. "Your Majesty, you can't go in yet." The nanny was startled and slammed the door shut. Bang! As Fu Kang was about to rush through the threshold, his nose hit the quickly closed palace door hard, accompanied by a warm feeling. 2 lines of red liquid slowly seeped out from under his nose. Fu Kang raised his hand and touched it, and his hands were full of blood. The air seemed to be quiet in an instant. Chu-Ling Chuan silently looked at the emperor, who was stopped outside the palace door and hit hard, and could only remain silent for a while. After a long while, he saw Fu Kang standing still, and couldn't help but remind him, "Your Majesty." Fu Kang turned his head. Chu-Ling Chuan pointed to his nose, "It's bleeding, I'll help you deal with it." Fu Kang looked at him calmly. Perhaps it was because the news that Her Majesty's mother and daughter were both safe had spread, which made people suddenly feel relieved. At this time, seeing Fu Kang in such a mess, Chu-Ling Chuan wanted to laugh. But he held back. Putting down the medicine box, he took out some gauze from it and handed it to Fu Kang. "Wipe it first." Fu Kang took the gauze without saying a word and blocked his nose. "Don't worry, the nanny just said that Her Majesty is safe," Chu-Ling Chuan said calmly. "The first child is a little princess, which is good. It's really good." Fu Kang took a deep breath and exhaled gently, as if he had a sense of reality that his soul had returned to his place at this moment. Mother and daughter are both safe. Nothing could make him feel more at ease than these 4 words. 2 maids came over with water not far away. Chu-Ling Chuan raised his hand and waved, "Come here." One of the maids came over. Chu-Ling Chuan took out a soft handkerchief and motioned the maid to pour some water on the handkerchief, then said, "Bring it in." Chu-Ling Chuan handed the wet handkerchief to Fu Kang. Fu Kang took it and wiped the blood under his nose, and breathed a sigh of relief. "When can I go in to see His Majesty?" "It should be soon. They are now cleaning His Majesty after delivery." It is not convenient for you to go in. Chu Ling Chuan said, Your Majesty is fine, and I have successfully completed my mission. Fu Kang hesitated for a while. I seem to have heard that women will feel very painful and scream when giving birth, but why didn't His Majesty make any noise? Maybe His Majesty can bear it. Chu Ling Chuan said, After all, His Majesty is the king of a country, and she must take into account her dignity. Moreover, Her Majesty herself has a tough temperament, much stronger than ordinary women. Gritting her teeth and enduring is her style. Fu Kang felt as if a needle had pierced her heart when she heard this. Thinking of Nuan Nuan bearing the pain of childbirth alone, unable to even scream to vent the pain, my heart couldn't help but ache. Chu Ling Chuan said nothing more. After a while, the palace door was opened for the third time, and the nanny walked outside the palace and saluted to Fu Kang, My lord, you can go in. Fu Kang walked over, stepped through the palace door, and went straight to the inner palace. The inner palace was filled with a strong smell of blood. A midwife opened the window for ventilation, and explained to the palace maids while opening the window, It's summer now, so don't worry about your majesty and the little prince catching a cold. Open the window during the day to ventilate the bloody smell in the palace, and close the window at night. The palace maids took note. Fu Kang walked to the bed, looked at Chu Qing Huang, who was sweating and pale, and his eyes were slightly red. He couldn't help but hold her hand tightly. What's wrong? Chu Qing Huang laughed, A man has learned to cry. The midwives and maids in the palace had not yet dispersed. When they heard His Majesty's words, they subconsciously glanced at the Emperor's husband. However, everyone quickly realized their impoliteness and quickly turned their eyes away. But they couldn't help but mutter in their hearts, Is the Emperor's husband so fragile? When a woman gives birth, the man cries. The midwife has delivered babies so many times, but she has never seen such a situation. However, the one who gave birth today was the Empress, so naturally she couldn't be compared with ordinary women. Your Majesty can't eat cold food these 2 days, and you can't take a bath in the first few days, you can only wipe your body. The midwife explained in detail, the bedroom must be kept ventilated, which is good for your Majesty's health. Fu Kang didn't say anything. Although the midwife's words were given to the maids, he was the one who served His Majesty personally, so Fu Kang secretly remembered them in his heart. This is the little princess. Another midwife brought the child over and handed it to Fu Kang, Your Majesty, please take a look. Fu Kang glanced at the child in the swaddling clothes. His face was small, his eyes were closed, his brows were wrinkled, and his mouth was puffed up. He didn't look very happy. Fu Kang was silent for a moment. What happened? She was spanked just now. Spanking. Fu Kang frowned, she was just born. Your Majesty, the little princess didn't cry just now. The midwife explained, a newborn baby must cry to make people feel at ease. The little princess didn't cry, so I spanked her twice. Fu Kang's face didn't look good. He was spanked twice? Put the child down, you can go out first. Chu Qing Huang said, Fu Kang can stay here. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 580. So everyone left, and soon there were only the couple and a newborn baby in the hall. I don't know if it's because the baby grew up in the belly for 12 months and was well nourished, but although the baby's expression is not very good, his little face is really beautiful, with tender skin, crystal clear, like a little angel. Fu Kang sat down in front of the bed. Chu Qing Huang's eyes fell on his face. In addition to his pale and haggard face, his swollen nose was particularly conspicuous, which directly affected his handsome appearance. After looking at him for a long time, she said, What's wrong with your nose? Fu Kang's expression paused slightly, and seeing that she was fine, he felt much more relaxed. Maybe I didn't rest well these 2 days, and my skills have deteriorated a little. I didn't react as fast as the nanny. Chu Qing Huang heard this, and her expression was hard to describe. When a woman gives birth, men are generally not allowed to enter. It is normal for the nanny to react faster in a hurry. The child was placed on the bedside, and Fu Kang sat on the edge of the bed, holding her hand. Is it very hard? We will only have this one, no more. Chu Qing Huang smiled. Didn't you say before that you wanted to have more children? Too torturous. Fu Kang shook his head, still frightened. I will definitely not have any more. Just in time. You want your daughter to be the crown prince, so we will directly make her the crown princess and train her well. Let's talk about it later. Drink some water. Fu Kang poured her a glass of water. His eyes fell on her lips. Your lips are all chapped. Chu Qing Huang raised his eyebrows. Do you dislike me? No. Fu Kang shook his head again and again. I feel sorry for her. I blame the pain. Chu Qing Huang couldn't help but look at his nose again. Which nanny is so strong? I won't let her go later. Fu Kang pursed his lips, and even his smile was a little pale. It's okay, your safety is the most important. This face has been a lot more haggard recently. Chu Qing Huang raised his hand and touched his face. The child is born safely, and you can sleep peacefully. Fu Kang's eyes were full of distress. Are you hungry? Fortunately, I don't feel hungry now. Chu Qing Huang smiled faintly. How do you feel about being a father for the first time? Fu Kang was stunned. His eyes fell on the baby in the cradle. Very wonderful. Thinking that there will be a little girl chasing him and calling him daddy in the future, Fu Kang's heart softened, and he couldn't help but smile. She is very beautiful. She is really beautiful. Chu Qing Huang said, give her a name. Name. Fu Kang frowned slightly. Let's call her Nuan Nuan. Chu Qing Huang thought for a while. Jinyu represents beauty and preciousness, and also carries our expectations for her. The name can be male or female. I hope she can become a dragon or a phoenix. Fu Kang raised his lips. Chu Jinyu. Fate is a helpless thing. Chu Qing Huang sighed faintly. My father gave up his status as a member of the royal family of the Great Zhou for my mother, and his children's surnames all followed my mother. Now my child can't be named Xianyuan, but has to be named Chu. Wrong. Jinyu, Xianyu and Jinyu, both sound good. Fu Kang said, otherwise, let the master give her another name. Wrong. Jinyu. This can be regarded as a regret. Although for the master, there may not be any regrets. You can also call me Wei Jinyu. Chu Qing Huang sat up. Help me sit up, I don't want to lie like this anymore. Fu Kang reached out and supported her. You are still weak, don't try to be strong. Not that weak. Nuan Nuan, do you think Jinyu is very quiet? Fu Kang's eyes fell on his daughter's little face again. Why doesn't she cry or make a fuss? Do you want her to cry or make a fuss? Not really. Royal children are born to be stable and self-sustaining. With the demeanor of a king. Chu Qing Huang glanced at his daughter. Father is still worried that she is dull. In my opinion, this child will be like me in the future. Fu Kang couldn't help laughing. Well, Nuanuan is right. If she is really like Nuanuan, it would be great. She can be in charge of the country, and she doesn't have to worry about being bullied. Your Majesty. The wet nurse came in and saluted respectfully. It's time to feed the little princess. Chu Qing Huang said, take her over. Yes. The wet nurse carried the little palace maid to the side hall, and Minjiao and Jinlan followed. Chu Qing Huang looked at the bloodshot eyes of Fu Kang and patted the bed. Come up and have a nap, you've been exhausted these days. The bed was clean, and the bedding was replaced with new ones when it was cleaned just now. Fu Kang shook his head, held her arm tightly, and put his face on her arm. I'm not sleepy, I just want to accompany you like this. Chu Qing Huang reached out and touched his head, and didn't speak for a while. However, not long after, she found that Fu Kang actually fell asleep on her arm. Chu Qing Huang's expression paused slightly, and she stroked his hair gently, as if coaxing a child. Not sleepy? I'm afraid he was extremely sleepy a long time ago, but he was just holding on because of worry. Now his tense nerves relaxed and he fell asleep so quickly. After feeding the child, the wet nurse saw the scene when she brought the child over, and quietly retreated. The hall was quiet. Although the air was not very good after giving birth, it was not as strong as before after ventilation. All the used things were removed and replaced with new ones. Fu Kang just slept on the edge of the bed for an hour. He was awakened after an hour, Nuan Nuan. Chu Qing Huang had just taken a short nap against the head of the bed. When she heard him speak, she opened her eyes and looked at him. Did you have a nightmare? Fu Kang wiped his face with a strange expression. I dreamed that Nuan Nuan gave birth to a monster. Chu Qing Huang. No, Fu Kang knew that the sentence was inappropriate and quickly corrected him. I mean, our daughter is different from other children. Chu Qing Huang said, what's the difference? She naturally understood that what he said was different was far more than ordinary, but it's just a dream. Fu Kang sighed. Jinyu represents priceless jade, and is naturally the most noble. It is indeed different from ordinary children. Chu Qing Huang frowned. Fu Kang looked at her. How long have I slept? Is Nuanuan hungry? Ask them to prepare some food and send it over. Yes, Chu Qing Huang nodded. You haven't eaten well in the past 2 days. Eat a rich meal and take good supplements. Fu Kang shook his head. I can eat the same as Nuan Nuan. A woman must avoid eating after giving birth and cannot eat many things. The food is light and he has to accompany her. How can she just watch him eat and drink? Husband and wife should share joys and sorrows. The hardest part is over, food or anything else doesn't matter.